Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have a very special guest. Heard about her on Clubhouse. We met on Clubhouse. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, Google it. If you have an iPhone, get in. If you don't have an iPhone, go buy an iPhone and then get in, or something Apple related, right? It's not worth not being on that platform, in my opinion. But also, her name is Monica Tanner, lives in Eagle, Idaho. So from my old stomping grounds, we just were discussing that's where I grew up in Parma, and my orthodontist was right there. So she knows my orthodontist. So there's that. But we're going to be talking to her. She is a relationship and intimacy expert. Monica, please, hopefully that was a good enough introduction, but hopefully you can do it even better because you know yourself.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we do try to keep things very PG, so don't worry about that. But we can talk about all the good things. So my story, let's just start it when I turned 12 and my parents decided to get a divorce. And that kind of spiraled me into this obsession with 2 questions. 1, what makes a marriage strong and lasting? And 2, what defines success? So as a young kid, the ripe age of 12, I decided that I was going to solve all the world's problems in these 2 areas. So I went to college at the University of Texas at Austin, go Longhorns, graduated with a degree in sociology and child development with the intention of going to graduate school to become a social worker so that I could help families. What happened was the summer I graduated from college, my Prince Charming rode in on his white horse, swept me off my feet, and we got married and started our own family. Not only did we start our family, but we also started a business together. That's right. We got married, started having children, and we birthed a business, which is not a small task. We learned right away that we were very, very different in the way that we thought about lots of things and the way that we thought about business in general. And this business ended up being super successful. My husband still runs it to this day right here in Eagle, Idaho, where you just spoke about. But after I had my 3rd baby, I was so overwhelmed with my responsibilities at home, my responsibilities raising our children, and my responsibilities in the business. I basically gave my husband an ultimatum where I said, either take me out of the business or check me into the funny farm. And he chose the former. He hired people to replace me in the business. And I started doing the stay-at-home mom thing, which was so rewarding and wonderful. But it was also the hardest thing I've ever done. I had another baby and then realized that while I loved my children and I loved being at home, I needed a creative outlet that was just mine. And so I just started a business. It started out as a craft business and blossomed into this seasonal boutique that I ran with my good friend for about 12 years. And then I sold it. But through all of that, I learned so much about juggling 2 businesses, 4 children, and a household, and all the things that go along with that. And I wanted to take all of that knowledge back to my first love, which was figuring out how to make marriages strong and lasting. So I went back to school. Once all of my kids were in school, I went back to school to become a marriage and family counselor. I did that for 1 year until I decided I did not want to be a therapist because I didn't see any reason why couples needed to wait until they were in crisis mode to try and improve their marriage. At that point, I dropped out of that program and I started a podcast and a coaching business where I help entrepreneurs who are married and are building or scaling their business stay happily married so that they can reach all of their goals without sacrificing the things that are most important to them. So I have a special place in my heart for entrepreneurs who are married and trying to dream big and build all the things, but they also have all of these other important responsibilities that they don't want to neglect. So that is my story. That's how we got to today. And I love talking about all things relationships and entrepreneurship.
Awesome. I love it. And if you know or have heard this podcast multiple times before, then you know why I invited her on here, because we have very similar missions from one respect or another. Now, my parents, thank goodness, they have been married. I don't even know how many years at this point, probably almost 40, 82. So almost 40 years. Wow. Their anniversary's on May 4th. And if I'm wrong, parents.
Oh, mine's May 3rd. Hooray.
So yeah, but very, very happily, well, I would say they've been married a long time. And there's been lots of ups and downs. I'm curious. Let's go back to the beginning though. Your questions, what makes a marriage strong and lasting? So I want whoever you who are listening to this, replace the word marriage with anything. The principles of success, the principles of life are the same across the board. So I don't care if you're not married yet or you are married and divorced or whatever it is, like replace whatever you're struggling with in life with the word replace marriage with whatever you're struggling with life. And what we talk about today will have direct meaning and implication in your life. Okay. Would you agree, Monica?
Absolutely. What's really cool is I've said that a million times. The answer to both of those questions, what makes a marriage strong and lasting and what defines success, is actually very much the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, my story was more that there was just a lot of abuse, both physical and mental and emotional abuse. And I walked out of my childhood with a very similar commitment. Hey, why is this happening? Like, this just doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? Why does it continue to happen all across the world at an increasing rate? So I actually studied psychology, went into neuropsychology, found myself in sociology and biochemistry, and ultimately we came to the same realization, guys. We could stick around and we could try and repair all the crap, or we could spend our time, invest our energy and our emotions into preventing crisis. And so we're both doing the same thing as far as objective, just from different avenues, right? We're servicing our clients in different ways. So I love that. I'm curious, what did you find, if you were to say a list of 5 things or something, what would you say did make marriages stronger?
Yeah, I love it. And so 5 things, I'll use my C's, right? So commitment, consistency, communication, connection, conflict resolution. That's 5, but we can even go farther into what is my 6th? I have 6 C pillars. I can't think of the 6th one.
Hey, that's okay. I caught you off guard there a little bit, but
courage, clarity. There's lots of great C's that definitely define what makes a marriage strong and lasting and what makes people successful.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because I know that for me, I had, again, because of what I had studied before and then what I saw going on in relationships around me before I got married. One, I went to a therapist to make sure that all of the examples of parenting and relationships that I had seen over the years, I had processed through and kind of weeded between, hey, not necessarily what's good and bad, because to be honest, I don't really believe in good or bad. I believe in what serves my intentions and what doesn't serve my intentions. Yeah. So it's more of just how do I want my relationship to end up and what principles are important to establish at the beginning of a relationship. So I did that. Then I read a bunch of I think the most impactful book that I ever read, I don't even know who wrote it, but was His Needs, Her Needs, How to Build an Affair-Proof Marriage.
Absolutely.
I was listening to that book on a trip to Europe. So I was traveling around Paris and Italy and Switzerland, England. and I was listening to this book, and it was the most eye-opening thing because one, it opened my eyes to the fact that I had unintentionally and completely unawareingly been part of many emotional affairs with married women throughout my teenage and early 20s life, and I didn't know, right? I think I'm just this really loving, caring person who's a listening ear, and I don't really recognize that they are sharing stuff with me that really should be shared with it's an intimate conversation, and it should be shared in between the two parties that are involved, not with somebody else. And I'll never remember one specific time where this woman was sharing with me, and her child walked up and she stopped, and then she's like, "Hey, go back inside. We're having a conversation." And I'm like, this is really like, it finally clicked. This might not be the right conversation for me to be having. I'm probably not supposed to be part of this conversation if we're shielding this conversation about other parents from the children. It was just a very surreal experience. I'll never forget it. Like the wind, the sun, like out everything. I was like, oh, I get it finally. So talk about that. The need to be able to have those conversations, and at what point can unintentionally we end up start having these emotional affairs. And it doesn't have to be with another person. It can be with your phone. It can be with, you can have an emotional affair with a lot of different things. In my case, it was with humans, but talk about that from a position of like what separates a marriage.
Yeah. So His Needs, Her Needs is by Willard F. Harley Jr. So such a good book. Highly, highly recommend it. But as far as, shielding yourself from affairs, things like that, is we value what we prioritize. And so one of my biggest messages is to prioritize your relationship with your spouse. Now, learning the skills, strategies, and frameworks of how to do that really, really well is my life's work. It is what I teach. But what's most important to remember is just, if we value our relationship, then we will prioritize it above all else. And so there are ways to do that. And the ways, just our commitment to do that through the busiest seasons of life is what is most important. So a commitment to prioritize our spouse. Like, so when you're young and you get married, you're really busy raising your children, and you're really busy establishing yourself in your career, whether that's in entrepreneurship or, your job or whatever that is. There's lots of things that kind of take your attention away from your spouse. And it's really easy to make that okay, because your children need you, because they depend on you. They can't wipe their own butts, and they can't drive themselves the places they need to go, right? They need you. And your clients or your customers or your job, that's what pays the bills. So it's easy to prioritize those things. And your spouse, they can take care of themselves. And it's really easy for a lot of years in your early marriage to be like, oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. But this phenomenon that I've run into and I've seen over and over and over again is you get to a certain point in your life, in your marriage, when things really start to change. Your kids start moving out of the house. You're looking at career changes. Your parents are getting older and needing you more. Women go through menopause. It's right around in your 50s. And you realize that your partner, for your entire life, you haven't been nourishing this relationship. And when it's really important, and when things start to shift and change, and you need to be able to depend on that relationship for love and support. And I love the cover of this His Needs, Her Needs, because it's like a man and a wife walking on a beach, holding each other. It's not there if you haven't taken the time to nourish and prioritize that relationship through the busiest seasons of your life. And so that's why what I do is so, so, so important.
So clarify this for not just me, but for the guests. Because I like words. Okay. So let's just start with that, because I'm going to be really nitpicky about words here for a second.
Yeah.
I think prioritize, because all words are sounds and they have a subjective meaning based on the relationship of the person who heard that word and where they have the emotional connection to it. Okay. And if you got lost there, just go back and rewind it and listen to it again. But it really is the truth that we have this emotional connection to sounds based on the life that we grew up in. So the word prioritize, unfortunately, it's so easy to say, oh, you need to prioritize this, but it's so undefined. Like, I've talked to people who say, I am prioritizing my spouse and these people. That's why I'm working so hard. Right?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Really good.
So then they're saying the intention is the priority, not the action. And I want this to be very, very clear. You can look at my schedule. You can ask my wife. I'm not 100% perfect at anything, and I don't know anybody who is. If you find them, I'd love to speak with them, have them on the show. But I don't know anybody who is yet. But I can say that my family time is the first thing that goes into my schedule. And for me to schedule over my family time, there's a discussion with my wife, right?
Yeah.
That to me is what it means to prioritize. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm right and that that's the ultimate definition. But to me, that seems right for me. But other people will see the intention of prioritization rather than the actual prioritization. So speak to that and help clarify what exactly you mean by prioritize the relationship in this respect, please.
Okay, so I love this, and this is a little bit of a new, so I'm just going to speak out loud here, like think out loud, because nobody's ever challenged me on this before, and I love it. I love it. So prioritizing your relationship is going to look different for every single relationship, because every person is different, every relationship is different. But I would say if I had to put it under the umbrella of what does that mean, that means creating a shared vision, meaning that you both know where it is you're going. It doesn't mean you have to have the same goals. It doesn't mean you have to have the same passions. It means that you and your spouse have sat together and created a shared vision, a place where you both want to go. And when all is said and done, and I love the idea of this podcast, I think it's so important, a legacy. What is the legacy that you want to leave? So when you get to the very top of that mountain, meaning your success, what does success look like to you? And when you're standing at the top of that mountain with your partner, what do you see? Now, that includes everything that you've overcome, everything that you've accomplished together. That means in the roughest of rough times, when the path was unclear, when there was a fork in the road, when it was, hailing so bad you couldn't even see 2 feet in front of you, all of the challenges, all of the problems, all of the important decisions to be made, when all is said and done, what is that shared vision that you have for your life and for your family? Okay. Now, that shared vision is what informs all of the decisions you make about your business, about your vacation time, about how you raise your children. All of those things come back to this shared vision you've created. So every time there's a fork in the road, every time there's a challenge, you go back to this shared vision. That is what I would mean by prioritize your relationship. And then obviously that trickles down into the physical things you do, like you were talking about, putting your family time on the calendar. For me, it's going to be a non-negotiable date night every single week, a time where I reconnect with my spouse. It's going to be time that I spend every single day connecting with my partner. Nothing gets in the way of that. It's me putting my partner each day on my to-do list. Whether it doesn't have to be big or elaborate. It just means that when I write down my daily to-dos, that my partner makes it on that to-do list every single day. That's what I mean by prioritizing your marriage.
Okay. I love that. So thank you so much for giving a little bit more context there. I'm going to throw another, and not a wrench. I'm sure you've talked about this with other people, but another C for sure. So, I mean, you have your your commitment, communication, connection, conflict resolution, all these things. One thing that for me was, and I think, and people will get upset, whatever, I don't really care, but I think compatibility is more important than anything else. It's more important than physical attraction. I think it's more important than anything else in my relationship. So for me, I went into a relationship looking for compatibility. I think that is, for me, it's part of having this shared vision. The hard question comes in, what happens when people fell in love, they got married, they had a bunch of kids, they did what they were going to do, and then when they actually sit back and think about whether they're compatible or not, the answer is no, and they really are just not compatible. At that point, do you just seek for ways that they can find some compatibility, or do you say, you know what? I mean, it's the unfortunate reality, but if both people and everybody, kids, parents, everybody's going to be happier in separate relationships, what's that negotiation, and how do you navigate that from a thought process or a coach perspective?
Oh gosh, well, I would love to dive really deeply into this, but first I'm going to ask you your definition of compatibility so that we're talking on the same wavelength. So
compatibility for me would mean that I think it goes back to your shared vision, right? This is so for me, I went through a lot of girls that I dated or went on dates, right? No, I didn't do anything with them, but went on dates with them. And there were certain things that I could bring up that they would just instantly, they weren't interested in being in a relationship, and that's fine. But ultimately, do they process information similar? Because the reality is of this question, we all are going to change and evolve through our marriage. So be aware that when you start out compatible doesn't necessarily mean you end compatible either. And vice versa. You could start out incompatible and end up compatible. But for me, it started with very clear expectations of this is how I'm choosing to behave in the life that I'm seeking to create. And if you're not on board for me to create my life, I'm going to help you create your life the way you want it, but they need to be compatible. We need to be going in the same direction, or it's just not going to work long term. And so why stretch this out, this emotional connection out? Because in my experience, I've fallen in love with a lot of different girls, and they all look differently, all shapes, sizes, colors. Like, it doesn't matter. I think you can grow to love anyone. If you study the Indian culture, like Indian culture, arranged marriages, and they grow to love and respect people and have this deep devotion to each other. And it's not necessarily about the sexual fall in love. Oh, you're so pretty and whatever. So for me, I mean, on my first date with my wife, I told her that was about, because she asked me like, well, what type of girl do you like? And for the record, my wife, when I was that age, her physical features were not what I thought I liked. We'll just put it that way. And so I told her, I was like, well, how honest do you want me to be? She said, oh, well, be honest. And I was like, okay, this is what I look like. And she's like, oh, so not me then. And I was like, well, the reality is it's a good thing that's only 30% of this equation, right? Like, I have to be able to wake up and have sexual intimacy with you, or it won't work. But I want to be compatible over sexual attraction personally. So that's what I mean by compatibility, that we're going in the same direction. We process information similarly. We're willing to change. I also knew myself that I can be dominant. And so I needed somebody who was willing to push back on my dominance. I didn't want somebody who was just going to like take whatever I said and run with it. I wanted somebody who was going to push back. So I tested that with a lot of the relationships that I was in. Anyways, hopefully that gives you enough clarity there to move this conversation forward.
It does. And I want to challenge you just a little bit, because
Go for it.
I can understand where you're coming from. Absolutely, 100%. But I honestly believe that our differences are what create the passion in our marriage. And I want to read you this quote. It's out of a newspaper article, and but it was quoted by a religious leader that I look up to. And basically, it goes like this. It says, One of the grand errors we tend to make when we are young is supposing that a person is a bundle of qualities, and we add up the individual's good and bad qualities like a bookkeeper working on debts and credits. If the balance is favorable, we may decide to take the jump into marriage. The world is full of unhappy men and women who married their mates because it seemed to be a good investment. Love, however, is not an investment, it is an adventure. And when the marriage turns out to be as dull and comfortable as a sound investment, the disgruntled party soon turns elsewhere for adventure. Ignorant people are always saying, I wonder what he or she sees in the other, not realizing that what he or she sees in the other and what no one else can see is the secret essence of love. So I read that only because we can, and I think a lot of us do, we have our lists. Like, these are the things that are really important in the person that I marry. And like, this is what's going to make our marriage good, right? However, we all know what happens to our best laid plans. Life is an adventure, and we don't know the details of the adventure that we're going on. But what I do know from the work that I do is that regardless of the circumstances, we get to write our own love story. And so now you talk about the legacy we want to leave. The legacy that I want to leave in this world is helping couples understand that no matter what the details of their story are, they are still in charge of the love story that they write.
Can I add a clarification here? Because I want to make sure that I'm not confused at all, and I want to make sure that none of the listeners are confused.
Yes.
I personally believe that love is universal, and there's no one that I don't love that I'm aware of. Okay.
Yes.
That's my personal opinion. Sexual attraction and love are not connected in Samuel's mind. Okay. I think that they sometimes they can flirt with each other, but I can love my brother, I can love my business partner. I would do anything for them and be committed, but I'm never going to have sex with these people, right? So I'm choosing to be devoted morally and ethically to one individual to fulfill the role of sexual intimacy. Uh-huh. That doesn't diminish my love for her, the fact that I love other people, or devotion to her. But love for me, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ, and I don't think that he walks around loving everybody with the fullest extent of his love, and by nature wants to have sex with everybody. I don't. Okay. In my mind, they have to be two separate things.
When you say compatibility, you're talking more about sexual compatibility.
No, I'm talking about life. Like, do we actually want to end up in the similar place? It's not necessarily like, are your habits the same? All of those things. It's not checkbox. It's just like, if you want to end up in Utah and I want to end up not in Utah, this isn't going to work. Like, I know this isn't going to work, because if I'm hell-bent on not being in Utah and you're hell-bent on being in Utah, why bring up this conversation every time we have a conversation? Like, for me, it's not like it's just, if you have a vision of where you want to go and they're completely separate, how do you even rectify that without having arguments at the very beginning of your relationship? And my wife can correct me, and anybody who knows me, they can correct me if they've seen something other than this statement. But to my knowledge, I haven't ever yelled at or even had a real argument with my wife in 5 years. Now, that doesn't mean it won't ever happen. I don't know. But I think being intentional with compatibility, and then being compassionate when things happen and lifestyle changes, has helped me a lot to navigate that. But I wouldn't say that my compatibility is connected to my love. Like I said in the beginning, my love is something that I grow over time. The more I get to understand and see those differences, those things are like, oh, that's hilarious, the way that we do this thing differently. That's where a lot of that love comes from. But I think love gets built over time. And the sexual attraction, if you're just sexually attracted to somebody, you've probably seen this as a coach. If you're just sexually attracted to somebody and you mistake sexual attraction for love, how long do those relationships last? until you're done being sexually attracted to that person. There's no more love. Oh, I fell out of love with this person. No, you fell out of sexual attraction. You probably were never in love with the person. That would be my opinion. I love the pushback. Let's have a conversation.
Well, I want to ask you, like, what's wrong with having an argument?
I would say there's nothing wrong with having an argument if that's your style. For me, I personally don't enjoy arguing. So again, this goes back to definitions of words, though. Right. So for me, a discussion. So my mom, if you study, what's it called? Oh, Patrick Henry, but the early American history, right? So being able to have a lively discussion, but end with still loving and respecting each other, I wouldn't consider that an argument. I would consider that a discussion where you're both passionate about your opinions, but you're not arguing. Arguing for me implies that there's a need to be right and an unwillingness to even really recognize somebody else's point of view. And that I don't see any value in. I'm all for having a lively discussion. Let's have it right now. But as far as like arguing just to be right, I just don't see it, how that's benefiting us. Again, this goes back to another core belief that my goal is to become like God and become a creator. And I don't see him sitting there squabbling over stuff. He's decisive. He says this is how it's going to be. Take it or leave it. I don't like it. Okay. Have a nice day. So I don't know. I do my best to model what I believe God would do. That's my answer there.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. As far as like arguments, discussions, I would say conflicts. So I'm just trying to because when you talk about compatibility, I think compatibility is important, but I also think that conflict is equally as important, because I think that conflict is the driver of growth and also passion. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with having a lively discussion or a conflict, differences of opinions. In fact, I worry more about the couples who don't have a lot of differences of opinion versus the ones who do.
No, I completely agree. So everybody's listening to this. This is a classic example of differencing of terms. And so we're having similar conversations, but we're not communicating the same because of language patterns. So I said earlier when I was looking for a wife, right? I know that I'm a strong personality, and I didn't want to be with somebody who wouldn't push back, right? I understand that conflict, the ability to push me, is an essential part of this. The fact is, some people, for whatever reason, they were raised in homes where that was literally not allowed. The woman could not defy the man. The moment the man spoke, it was law. And that would not be an effective relationship for Sam. Because I value growth so much, if whatever I say they just go with, I would feel super unfulfilled that I wasn't getting to grow. Because let's be honest, I know 90% of the stuff that I say, I'm not 100% certain on. I'm like, it sounds certain. Believe me, it sounds certain, but I'm super willing to change my opinion if it makes sense to. So, but because of my trade, and I've been in sales for so long, my tone is a very certain tone. So then people just accept it as like, oh, if Sam said it, it must be right. I'm like, no, I'm not saying it's right. Like, push back. Give me some.
Come on.
Right? Exactly. I love this conversation because it's exactly that. Like, give me some feedback. Like, tell me what you think about it. I'll decide whether I agree or not. But so I think conflict is crucial in a relationship, or again, if you're using the word conflict, I would say differing opinions to spur on a connection of new ideas, but it doesn't matter.
What is important, and what I think is hidden in your explanation of compatibility, is a safety that you create in your relationship, where it's safe to have differing opinions. It's safe to challenge each other's thoughts and ideas, and it's safe to develop and grow in whatever way that you're going to develop and grow, which is not something that you can predetermine before you get married, by the way. It's definitely, like you said, you can put your little testers out there, and you can try really hard to test this and make sure that, she's going to push back on this and things like that. However, like the drivers of growth and compatibility, as you would say, I think is being able, the two of you, to create a safe space for you to become as Sam as you can possibly be, and for your spouse to be as she can possibly be.
Yeah, completely agree. So we're going to move on to the next topic here, because I just really want to talk about this. And the fact is, we did not have enough time for this conversation. So we may have to have you on again. I know you have a hard stop at 2 because you got another thing going on. So what is, again, this comes back from my opinions, but family and business. I think a marriage contract is very likely one of the biggest financial business contracts that any human will write in their life. I would say 99% of people are going to write in their life. High-end business owners, maybe there's something bigger, but the reality is Bezos wrote this contract for his marriage before he got stuff sorted out, built $1 trillion company, and had to give half of it away instantly. So like marriage trumps an enormous amount of other business contracts. Like it's insane. So, yeah. And if you're a stay-at-home mom and you somehow look bad on yourself or think, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, you have more management, organizational skills than probably half of the managers in corporate America. So like, don't look bad on yourself. You're doing awesome. And if you're not, that's okay. You're probably still doing better than a lot of other people. But what was harder, running a business or your family organization? Like, and what was the differences, the different problems that came up in both?
Yeah. So just in my own personal experience, being a stay-at-home mom without a creative outlet for myself, which is, I have a very entrepreneurial mind. I have a lot of like goals that are attached to measurable like things. So it was hard for me to be a stay-at-home mom. Also because and this is like something I always, when I go on mom podcasts and things like that, like people say like, what do you wish somebody had told you about being a mom? And I'm like, I wish someone had told me that I didn't have to love all the stages or be good at all the stages, because right now I have teenagers and I freaking love being a mom of teenagers. They are fantastic. Now you'll find moms who will say they do not like being a mom of teenagers. They like having little kids that they can control, right? I love listening to my teenagers and like as they figure out the world and who they are in the world, it's my favorite. But being a stay-at-home mom of little kids was really hard for me. I'm very organized. I'm very type A. I like to control things, and little kids are messy. Like no sleep, lots of bodily fluids, and having to remember all the things for all the people, like the snacks and the shoes and the change of clothes and the diapers I just did not love that stage of motherhood. And it's okay, because here's why. Because I was not good at remembering all the things all the time, my kids are very independent. When they need to go somewhere, they get their own things, because like we would go swimming and I would forget the towels or we would go out for the entire day and I would not have packed the snacks. That's just who I was as a mom, right? But as a business owner, I'm very good at forecasting and seeing what needs to be done and those types of things. That's just how my brain works. So having a business of my own where I can like measure progress and things like that just works better for me personally, but everybody is different.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a mom. Frankly, I'm so grateful for Charlie and that she fulfills that role for me. I don't know what I would do without her in that respect, because I'm the same way, man. She's like, oh, did you feed them today? I'm like, oh, were they supposed to eat? Right. I haven't even eaten.
My kids are so good at making mac and cheese and ramen and all the things, right? Because sometimes I just forget.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So what was harder to be running a business with your spouse or running a business with just another business partner?
Wow. Well, definitely was harder to run a business with my spouse, because you don't ever get to like have a break from each other, right? You leave work and you're home, right? And you've got to divide all the responsibilities up everywhere. And so when you find but it was also infinitely more rewarding because you learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses and how to leverage those in the different areas. Like my husband is really good at he's really good at communicating. He's really good at follow through. He works really, really hard. He's really good at a lot of the things with the kids that I'm not. So in business and in life, he's got strengths, and I have strengths, and my strengths are just very different, right? I feel more emotionally into the kids, which makes me a really good teenage mom because I know like I can get back to that point, the things that they're going through. It's easy for me to think about those things. In business, my strength was organization. Like he didn't organize anything, but I was very good at keeping things on track, right? And so you learn when you work with your partner how to leverage each other's strengths and weaknesses to create a really unbreakable team.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then it helps knowing moving into the not relationship aspect, what roles you're good at and what roles you're not good at, and that goes into, it goes into the same marriage conversation, but it goes into every conversation. Understanding what your strengths and weaknesses are a huge part of creating a success, defining success, right? I would say a fulfilling and happy, joyful experience in whatever it is you're looking into. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you more, obviously you're on Clubhouse and you hold regular meetings there. So again, I'm not going to get off this high horse of mine, soapbox. You got to get on Clubhouse, guys. You got to get on Clubhouse. You got to get on Clubhouse. Don't just waste time there, though. Go find a room that you're getting value. Take notes. Don't just listen for no reason at all. Take notes. Make it valuable. But so they can find you on Clubhouse. And then also, just tell us where we can find you if they wanted to either be coached by you or share their story with you of success. Where would be the best place to connect with you?
You bet. So the easiest place to find all the places where I am is from my website, www.onthebrightersideofmarriage.com. You can find all my social media handles there. Instagram, Monty Tanner 1. Clubhouse is not on there yet, but somehow they'll figure out how to link your Clubhouse to your website, but that's Monty Tanner. And then my podcast is on there as well, On the Brighter Side of Marriage for Entrepreneurs. So those are pretty much all the best places to find me. And I've really appreciated having this discussion with you, Sam. I hope we can do it again very soon.
No problem. So this is the second to last section. This is called Legacy on Rapid Fire. 5 questions, 1 word, 1 sentence answers. Okay. So first question is, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
Not knowing what I don't know.
Huge. What do you think the biggest accomplishment you've had thus far in your life is?
Marrying my husband.
Awesome. And what's the hardest thing you've ever done?
Giving birth to children without medication.
I will agree with you, even though I've never experienced it. My wife did it twice, and my mom did it a lot more than that, and I'm grateful for them. Next would be, what is one secret habit, mindset, or behavior that you think contributes most to your success?
Consistency.
And what are 1 or 2 books you believe could benefit the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Think and Grow Rich and Come As You Are.
Both great books. So this is a final question. Now, this goes directly to legacy. We're going to pretend that you've died and your great-great-great-great-grandchildren, they're sitting around a table discussing your life, the impact you had, and the legacy you left. What do you want your next generations to be saying about the legacy you left?
That their grandma taught people how to write their own love stories.
Fantastic. I love it. Hey, if you guys got value out of this, go show her some love on all of her social media platforms. Also, you can rate and review, I guess. I don't know what they call it, but 3, 4, 5 stars. 5 stars. Just do the 5-star option. It's the best. 5 gold stars on whatever you're listening to, and then leave a review. Leave your thoughts down here. Also, go join her on her social media and say your insights. Are you looking for guests on your podcast ever? If people feel like they have a great relationship story, would you want them on your podcast?
Absolutely. Hit me up. I love hearing people's love story. It's my favorite.
Fantastic. Love it. Okay, well, we will catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.